She came home with a limp and told me it was from yoga. Now, I'm no expert on yoga, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't leave bruises on the inside of your thigh unless the instructor's using a baseball bat. She stood in the hallway, leaning on the wall like she had just finished a marathon, her gym bag hanging from her shoulder and her water bottle still half full. Her face was flushed, not like someone who had been sweating from exercise, but someone who had come down from something intense, something private. Her eyes darted to mine for just a second too long, and that's when I felt the first crack in the glass that had been my life. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, nodded, and asked her if she wanted pasta for dinner. She said she was too tired to eat and went straight to the shower. And that's how this began. We had been married for 6 years. I didn't suspect a thing. I didn't go through her phone or question her late work nights. I didn't wonder about the new lingerie she bought and never wore for me. I didn't even flinch when she spent weekends volunteering at a photography exhibit downtown, even though she never once brought home a picture. I trusted her. I gave her space. I figured we all needed something for ourselves, and she deserved that too. But after that limp, I started watching. Not obsessively, just observing like someone trying to understand a new language they thought they already spoke. The next weekend, I offered to drop her off at her yoga class. She froze for a second, then laughed and said, "It's women only, babe. Don't worry, I'll Uber." I said nothing, just smiled and told her to have fun. Then I waited 10 minutes after she left and followed the Uber on my own bike. She didn't go to the yoga studio. She went to a neighborhood about 4 miles out, parked, got out, walked up to a red brick townhouse, and rang the bell. A man opened the door. Shirtless. She stepped in like she'd been there 100 times. I should have turned around and gone home. I didn't. I waited. 1 hour. 2. 3. I didn't count the time, not with my watch anyway. I counted it in pain. By the 4th hour, I biked home, walked into our kitchen, and made dinner like nothing happened. When she came home, she had no limp this time. Just a glow in her cheeks and a story about how the yoga instructor was starting to incorporate dance into the sessions. "It's wild," she said, "really loosens the hips." I nodded. I asked her if she wanted a glass of wine. She did. We drank in silence, and when she went to bed, I sat in the living room staring at our wedding photo on the bookshelf, the one where she's laughing, and I look like I just pulled off the biggest heist of my life. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. A week later, she left the same time for class. This time, I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I had something better. The townhome had a cafe right across the street, with a perfect view of the front door. I paid a guy who worked there, a teenager with a nose ring and no sense of boundaries, to snap pictures anytime she walked in or out of that house. I told him it was for a project. A social experiment, I said. He didn't care. He sent me 6 pictures over the next month. 6 different Saturdays. 6 different times she entered and left that place looking like she'd been baptized in someone else's sweat. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure what I was even looking for. Closure? An apology? An explanation? I wasn't sure any of those things would come. But I needed something. So I started pushing, just a little. I started asking about her classmates, about her yoga mat that never had a scratch, about why she never came back sore. She always had answers. Slick ones. Practiced. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was good at it. One night we went out for dinner, trying to play at being normal. At the bar, she excused herself to the restroom. While she was gone, the bartender leaned over and asked, "Hey, isn't that the woman who comes here on Tuesdays with the guy who drives the gray Jeep? They always take the corner booth." I froze. I didn't even know what to say. "Yeah," I mumbled. "That's her." The bartender didn't mean anything by it. He just thought he recognized her. He didn't know what he just dropped. When she came back, I couldn't stop staring at her. Every smile, every blink, every time she tucked her hair behind her ear, it all looked fake. Like a puppet show running on scripts. That night, when we got home, I asked her straight out, "Do you still love me?" She blinked once, then twice, and said, "Of course I do." "Why would you even ask that?" I shrugged and said, "I don't know. Just feels like something's missing lately." She walked over, kissed my forehead, and said, "We'll be fine." Then she went to bed. That was the moment I knew I had to find out who he was. Not because I wanted to compare myself. Not because I wanted to understand what he had that I didn't. But because I needed to look into his eyes, someday, and know exactly what kind of man smiles at another man's wife and thinks he's winning. So I went back to the townhouse. I watched. For 2 straight weekends, I stood across the street like a ghost, just waiting. And then, on the third Sunday, I got my answer. She stepped out of the house with him. He wasn't older. He wasn't rich. He wasn't better looking. He was just some guy. Average. Wearing a t-shirt from a landscaping company and cargo shorts. They laughed, kissed on the sidewalk, and then walked toward his Jeep. I took pictures. Not because I needed them, but because I wanted to hold on to the moment I stopped being the fool. That was the first moment in weeks I felt sane. Like I wasn't crazy after all. When she came home that night, I had already printed one of the photos and left it in an envelope on her pillow. I didn't say a word. I just waited. And when she walked into the bedroom and saw it, the silence was unbearable. She stared at the photo. Then at me. Then back at the photo. You followed me? She said quietly. I shook my head. No. You left a trail. I just stopped pretending not to see it. She didn't touch the envelope. She stood next to the bed like it was radioactive, arms crossed, eyes bouncing between the photo and my face. I watched her lips part, then press together, then open again like she was trying to draft a story in real time. I didn't help her. I just sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on my knees, waiting for whatever half-truth she was going to drag into the room. She finally picked up the envelope and pulled out the photo like she didn't already know what it was. She stared at it for a while, then looked at me, still holding the damn thing like it needed interpretation. You really went through all this? She asked, voice flat, not angry, not sorry, just disappointed that I ruined her game. Why didn't you just ask me? I didn't answer her. I didn't feel like feeding that garbage question. I had asked her. I'd asked her 100 different ways, in the form of kisses, in the form of questions, in silence, in body language. I had given her the space to tell me the truth, and she'd filled that space with a double life. She started walking toward the dresser like she couldn't stand still, fingers twitching, the photo now tucked in her hand like she wasn't sure if she should tear it up or frame it. Okay, she finally said, back to me. You caught me. Is that what you wanted? I looked at her, waiting for more, but she just stood there like her admission was a favor. I want the truth. Start there, I said, standing up slowly so I wouldn't lose it and punch a hole through the door. She turned around, leaned on the dresser, arms crossed again like she was bracing for something. His name is Joel. I met him at the photography exhibit I volunteer at. We talked, had coffee, it got too comfortable, and then one day I went to his place. That's it. It's not love. It's not some big romantic thing. I was just, she paused, searching for a word that would make it sound better, detached. Detached. I repeated. You were detached so you sleep with someone else? Her jaw tensed. She didn't like hearing it out loud. That's the thing with people who cheat. They want to live in the polite version of what they did. They want to call it a mistake or a connection or a misstep. They can't handle hearing it raw because it kills the fantasy that they were still decent people while doing it. It didn't mean anything, she said. It meant enough to lie for months. She looked down at the floor. I didn't plan for it to go that far. No one ever does, I said, the words dry in my mouth. But you kept going back. Again. And again. So at some point, you stopped slipping and started deciding. She said nothing. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't ask me to forgive her. She just stood there, completely still. That silence, that nothingness in her face, made everything worse. I wasn't even worth a breakdown. She had already made peace with the betrayal, maybe even long before I found out. And I realized in that moment, I wasn't part of her guilt, because she didn't have any. I asked her how long. She said 6 months. I asked if she ever planned to stop. She said she thought about it. I asked if he was married. She said no. I asked if she used protection. She rolled her eyes and told me not to insult her. That one made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because she had the audacity to care about being insulted now. So what happens now? She asked, finally walking toward me like we were going to negotiate a mortgage instead of digging through our relationship. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But you need to leave. Tonight. She blinked, stunned for the first time. Seriously? You think you get to cheat and sleep in the same bed with me like it's just another Tuesday? Her mouth opened to say something, but she shut it. She walked to the closet, grabbed a duffel bag, and started stuffing it with clothes, not even trying to hide the speed. She knew better than to argue. She didn't ask where she was going, didn't ask how long she had to stay away, didn't say she was sorry, not even once. That was what shocked me more than the cheating. The fact that she wasn't sorry, not in any way that mattered. As she zipped up her bag and walked to the door, I followed her. She didn't turn around. I didn't say goodbye. Gus, our dog, lifted his head from his bed and looked at her, then at me, then back at her, and didn't move. He just watched her walk out like she was some stranger who brought food once in a while. When the doors shut, the house felt different. Not empty, just clearer, quieter. Like the air wasn't being polluted by someone pretending to love me. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the living room, staring at the spot where she usually sat with her phone, pretending to scroll through recipes and news while texting him. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there and waited for the numbness to turn into something I could use. The next morning started like every other one had for the past 6 years, except she wasn't there to burn the eggs and pretend it was because she liked them that way. Her side of the bed was untouched from the night before, and I didn't bother making mine. I stood in the kitchen holding a coffee cup I didn't really want, staring at the same cabinet she used to fill with health supplements and overpriced tea she never drank. Everything looked the same, which pissed me off more than anything, because it shouldn't have. Something huge had happened. My marriage was a joke. My wife had been asleep with some nobody in a townhouse, and I was expected to go to work and do normal things like fix schedules and pretend the world hadn't just thrown up on my face. But I did go to work. I sat through meetings. I answered emails. I said good morning to coworkers who had no clue my life had just been torn open like a trash bag. I wasn't ready to tell anyone. Not yet. I wanted control. I wanted to be the one who decided when the mask came off. So I smiled. I joked. I shook hands. But behind every nod and polite grin, I was planning. By lunch, I had already opened a private email and started organizing everything I had. Pictures, times, dates, the message from the bartender. I wasn't stupid. I knew I'd need evidence if I was going to burn her life the way she torched mine. I wasn't just going to divorce her. I was going to make her regret every second she thought she was getting away with it. First, I messaged Joel. I didn't scream at him. I didn't threaten him. I just told him I knew. Told him I had pictures. Told him if I ever saw him near my house or tried to play dumb, I'd let his boss know he was sleeping a married woman during office hours and using company resources to coordinate his dirty little dates. I made it very clear that if he ever contacted my wife again, I would bury him legally, financially, and socially. He read the message within 5 minutes and didn't reply. That was enough. Then I called a lawyer. I told him I had proof of infidelity. I told him I wanted a clean break, and I didn't want her getting a cent more than she was legally entitled to. Oregon isn't a state that punishes cheating in court, but with the right evidence and the right timing, I could still protect my assets and maybe even get an edge on the house. He said he'd look into it, and I told him I'd drop off everything in person the next day. When I got home, the place still smelled like her perfume. That sharp vanilla and something else scent she loved spraying on every goddamn pillow like it was air freshener. I walked into the bedroom and started packing her things. I didn't fold them. I didn't take my time. I threw them into boxes, one after another, like I was tossing out trash. I didn't stop until the closet was empty. I left the boxes in the garage. I texted her once. Told her she had 3 days to come get it, before I dumped it at her sister's place. About an hour later, she called. I let it ring. Then again. Then again. I finally answered on the 4th call just to hear her voice when she realized she had no power anymore. I need to get some of my stuff, she said, trying to sound calm. It's in the garage. You've got 3 days. You don't have to be bad, Thomas. I'm not being bad. I'm being done. She didn't answer right away. I could hear her breathing, like she was deciding how to play it. Are you going to tell anyone? I already did. I lied. Everyone at work knows. Your parents will know by tomorrow. Joel knows too. Want me to send them the pictures, or do you want to do it yourself? That cracked her. Her voice dropped into a whisper. You don't have to humiliate me. No, I don't. But I want to. She hung up. I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. Made a list of every person in her life who deserved to know who she really was. Not just friends and family. The girls from her book club. The yoga instructor she pretended to learn from. The manager at the exhibit who thought she was a sweet, professional woman who loved helping with events. I didn't plan on sending anything yet, but knowing I could, that was enough for now. That night, I ate a frozen dinner in silence while Gus sat next to me, licking his paw like nothing had changed. I looked around and realized how much space she used to fill. Her shoes weren't by the door. Her ridiculous throw pillows weren't on the couch. The house felt wider, cleaner, almost like it could breathe again. And for the first time in weeks, so could I. 2 days after I boxed her stuff and dumped it in the garage, she showed up without a warning. She didn't call or text. She didn't even ring the bell. I heard the garage door creak open and looked out the window to see her standing there like she still lived in this house, like she belonged there. She looked around as if expecting me to come out and help her carry her things. I didn't move. I stood behind the curtain, arms crossed, watching her struggle to lift one of the boxes into her trunk. I could have opened the door. I could have said something. Instead, I just watched, and it felt better than any apology ever could. Later that night, I got a message from her sister. She asked me what happened and said Julia showed up crying, said I'd gone crazy, that I threw her out without explanation. I called her. I wanted to hear how far Julia was willing to go with the lies. Hey, I just heard from Julia, her sister said. She said things got bad out of nowhere, that you kicked her out suddenly. She seemed really shaken up. Yeah, I imagine cheating on your husband and getting caught would shake anyone up. There was silence on the other end. Then a slow, what? She's been sleeping some guy for the past 6 months. I have proof. Pictures. Times. Everything. Oh my God. She didn't say any of that. She said you were just angry and... She's lying to save face. You want me to send you the evidence? No. I believe you, she said, voice soft and shocked. I had no idea. I honestly thought you two were fine. Everyone thought we were fine. Including me. I ended the call after that. I didn't need sympathy or long talks. I needed people to know the truth so she couldn't spin her fake version. I sent a group email that night to a handful of her close friends, kept it simple. No name calling, no over-the-top drama. Just, Julia and I are separating. She was unfaithful for over 6 months. I've attached proof so there's no confusion. Please respect my decision not to be in contact with her going forward. Then I attached 3 pictures and hit send. The responses were exactly what I needed. Some people didn't reply. Others sent short messages like, I'm so sorry, or didn't see that coming. A couple of them called her out publicly. I saw one of her closest friends comment on her Instagram photo later that day with, is this the same face you wore when you were lying to Thomas every weekend? She deleted it after 10 minutes, but not before it got liked by 3 people. That was good enough for me. But it wasn't enough. I wasn't finished. She still had her job. She still walked into her exhibit every weekend pretending to be a classy professional. I wasn't going to let her keep that image. I made a fake account and sent an anonymous email to the head coordinator of the photography exhibit, told them their weekend volunteer was sneaking off during breaks to meet up with a man who wasn't her husband. I attached the same photos. I never got a reply, but a week later, Julia stopped mentioning the exhibit in her social posts. I checked their website. Her name was removed from the volunteer page. That was step 1. Step 2 came when I figured out who Joel really was. I had his plate number from a photo. A few clicks online and I got his full name. Turns out he worked at a warehouse logistics company and wasn't some big professional like she had made him sound. He was just a guy who moved crates and loaded trucks. I sent the same set of pictures and a short, anonymous tip to their HR department, letting them know one of their employees had been conducting a months-long affair with a married woman, often during hours he claimed to be working late. I don't know what happened after that, but 2 weeks later, his LinkedIn said, open to work. I didn't feel bad. Julia tried to reach out again. She called me from a different number this time. I picked up just to see what she had left. You happy now? She asked immediately. You told everyone. You embarrassed me in front of my friends. My job. I didn't cheat on you, I said. I just made sure everyone knew who you really were. You ruined my life. No, Julia. You did that all by yourself. I just held up the mirror. I hope you're proud of yourself. I'm not proud. I'm clean. That's more than I can say for you. She hung up. That was the last time we spoke. I changed the locks a week later. Got the divorce paperwork moving. She didn't contest anything. Didn't ask for money. Didn't even push back on the house. I think she knew better. I think deep down, she realized I'd turned into someone she didn't know anymore. Someone who wasn't going to fold under a sad voice or a flash of skin. The quiet guy who used to do everything to keep the peace had finally picked a fight, and he had no plans to lose. 3 weeks after everything blew up, she finally asked to talk in person. I had ignored every attempt before that. Her texts, her missed calls, her little messages through mutual friends, none of it moved me. I wasn't interested in hearing her pretend like she didn't mean to cheat, or that she suddenly wanted to fix something she spent months destroying. But this time, she sent a simple message, please. Just once. I owe you that. I thought about deleting it. I even typed out a response that just said, too late, but I didn't send it. Something told me I needed to hear her say it, not for her, but for me. I picked a public spot. A small cafe a few blocks from where we used to live. I told her 15 minutes, no games, no tears, and if she raised her voice even once, I was walking out. She agreed. When I walked in, she was already sitting at the far table, no makeup, her hair pulled back, looking like someone who hadn't slept in a few days. She looked up when I walked over and gave me a look I couldn't read, somewhere between regret and shame. I sat down, didn't shake her hand, didn't smile, just looked at her and waited. I know I don't deserve anything from you, she said, eyes flicking down to her hands. But I wanted to see you one last time. Not to change your mind. Just to say what I should have said the second I stepped out of that house. I didn't interrupt her. I let her talk. She needed to. I was wrong. I was selfish. I thought I could get away with it, and even when I knew you knew, I kept lying. I wanted to pretend it wasn't that bad, because I didn't want to feel like I was that person, but I was. I was worse. You made that choice. Again and again, I said, voice flat. It wasn't one mistake. I know. I thought I was unhappy. I thought something was missing, and instead of talking to you or being honest about how I felt, I just escaped into someone else. Joel didn't even matter. I don't even know what I saw in him. It wasn't about him. It was about me being a coward. I leaned back, arms folded, letting her words hang in the air. I wanted to feel satisfaction hearing her own up to it, but I didn't. It felt like watching someone clean up a mess after the building already burned down. There was nothing left to save. I don't need your apology, I said. I needed your loyalty. I needed your respect. Not once did you come to me and say anything was wrong. You just decided to go behind my back and treat me like I was some placeholder in your life. So whatever speech you planned, it's not going to fix anything. She nodded slowly, accepting it. I know. I ruined everything. I lost the best person I ever had. I wake up every morning and I can't believe how badly I fucked it all up. I believe it. You were real good at hiding it while it was happening. She winced, and I didn't care. I wanted her to feel every word. I wanted her to remember my face every time she told someone I was the angry one, or that things just fell apart naturally. I wanted her to sit with the reality that she didn't just end a marriage, she destroyed someone who actually loved her. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she said, her voice shaking now. I know I don't deserve that, but I needed you to hear it. From me. Not from a text. Not from some lawyer. From the person who betrayed you. You're not that person anymore, I said. You're just someone I used to know. The woman I married wouldn't have done this. Her eyes welled up, but I didn't stop. I wasn't here to comfort her. You know what's funny? I added. All you had to do was say you were unhappy. We could have talked. Maybe even separated like adults. But instead, you snuck around like a teenager and then cried when the consequences showed up. You don't get to pretend this was a sad accident. This was who you became. She sat in silence after that. She looked like she wanted to speak, but knew she had already said everything she could. I stood up. Don't contact me again, I said. No birthdays. No holidays. Nothing. If it's not about legal documents, I don't want to hear from you. I don't care if you're sorry. I don't care if you're lonely. You made your bed. Lay in it. She didn't move. She just stared at her hands as I walked away. Outside the cafe, the air felt clearer. My chest wasn't tight. My hands weren't clenched. I didn't feel happy, but I felt done. And that was enough. The divorce was finalized 2 months after that last conversation. No delays, no fights, no last-minute drama. Her lawyer didn't push for anything aggressive. I think she understood there was no ground to stand on. She walked away without the house, without my savings, without any spousal support. I kept what I built, and I made sure every inch of the settlement reflected just how far she had gone to destroy what we had. There was a silence after it was over that didn't feel peaceful or sad. It just felt necessary. The kind of silence that comes when there's nothing left to explain or recover. I had expected to feel empty once the papers were signed, like some part of me would sink under the weight of finality, but it didn't happen. I felt clear. I felt like I had finished something that needed to end long before I ever saw that limp walk through the front door. The first week living alone was weird. Not painful, just different. I didn't have to listen for the front door. I didn't hear her footsteps or fake laughs over the phone. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I ate when I wanted, I slept when I wanted, and the house stopped feeling like a reminder and started feeling like mine again. I packed the last of her garbage, some old makeup, a couple of books, a broken hairdryer, and dumped it in a donation bin without warning her. If she wanted to keep anything, she should have thought about that before she turned our marriage into a side gig. People eventually stopped asking questions. At first, coworkers and friends danced around it, unsure of what to say. Then they realized I wasn't hiding anything. I didn't get dramatic. I didn't rant about her to anyone who would listen. I just told the truth when it came up. Some respected that. Some backed off. A few people dropped off entirely, mostly the ones who used to hang out with us as a couple. I didn't miss them. I didn't want to keep any connection to the life I used to live with her. The friends who stayed, the ones who didn't try to downplay what happened or pretend like it wasn't serious, those were the ones I kept close. The rest didn't matter anymore. There was one moment I didn't expect, though. Her mom called me. She had never liked me much during our marriage, said I was too quiet, too plain, too focused on work, but she called out of nowhere and asked if we could meet for coffee. I didn't want to, but something about the way she asked made me agree. We sat across from each other in the same cafe where I last saw Julia. She looked tired, older than I remembered. I just wanted to say, she started, hesitating, I'm sorry for what she did to you. I don't know what got into her. I raised her better than that. You don't have to apologize for her, I said, keeping my tone neutral. I know. I guess I wanted you to know I always thought you were good for her. I thought she'd calm down, grow up. But some people, they don't change until they lose everything. She did, I said. And I'm not waiting around to see if she changes after that. She nodded and didn't argue. She thanked me for my time, then left. I haven't heard from her since. I don't expect to. It's been 5 months now. My house is cleaner, quieter, and somehow feels bigger. I've repainted the bedroom, replaced the sheets, and got rid of everything that reminded me of her. No framed pictures, no jewelry boxes, no little notes pretending we were happy. Gus, my dog, still sleeps in the same spot. But even he seems calmer now, like he picked up on all the tension that used to sit in the walls when she was here. I've gone back to my routines. I work, I cook, I go for walks. I don't chase distractions. I'm not dating. I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. I'm just living on my terms again, without someone lying beside me pretending they were part of the same story. I learned something from all this, something I didn't expect to learn the hard way. It's not just about betrayal. It's not just about lies or the act of cheating. It's about disrespect. It's about being in a room with someone who claims they love you while quietly deciding you're not enough. It's about someone choosing the easy way out every single day while you're putting in the work, thinking it's mutual. That's what breaks people. That's what turns love into something rotten. And no apology, no confession, no final meeting can undo that. If I could go back, I wouldn't change how I reacted. I wouldn't have screamed or begged or tried to hold it together for appearances. I would do it all again, cold, clean, and final. Because she needed to learn that not everyone's going to stick around after they've been used. Some people walk away and don't look back. And they're not bitter, they're not broken, they're just done. So that's the end of it. No dramatic goodbye. No second chances. She'll live with what she did, and I'll live without her. That's not revenge. That's not healing. That's just what happens when the truth finally shows up, and one of you can live with it, and the other can't.